So how many times are you planning on seeing A Star Is Born?
Well, we'll set that over under at 0.5, and we'll juice it minus 1,000 for the under, and then you can make a bet on that.
Can I parlay that with some other stuff?
Yeah, your vampire movie that you were talking about.
You need to see that. I don't know if it might not be your sense of humor. It's super goofy, but it's really funny. I can't believe you have no interest in the Star Is Born movie, though. It's gonna
I
be.
honestly, we were talking before the show. I had I'd been out of that loop. I had heard it mentioned. Why is this a big deal? I don't understand.
Because it's ridiculous. I feel like we win either way. Like, I think there's a 10% chance that it's an actual amazing movie, and we see like this piece of high art from Bradley Cooper, who's a very talented dude. He takes himself super seriously. And I just think there's like an 80% chance that even if so like 10% chance we get a masterpiece, 10% chance you're right and you should avoid it. But I think there's like an 80% chance that it's like a hilarious fucking train wreck. And we're all happy we watched it.
Time will tell, I guess. You'll have to keep me posted.
You won't tell because you're not even going to watch it. I can't believe you're such a killjoy. That's all right. This is awesemo.com's From A to B. I'm Andrew. That's Ben. We talk about sports. We have Josh, record us talking about sports. He has some takes about A Star Is Born. You should add him on Twitter or in Slack if he wants to talk about it.
Thanks, man.
It's at
Happy Friday, people.
Yeah. Happy Friday. I went to a show last night. Have not paid a ton of attention to sports because golf, for as amazingly as it started, turned into an unmitigated disaster really fast for me. So kind of been enjoying staying out of it. Did some research, but I did maybe an hour of research for this. I don't know. People don't know how much goes into these shows, but it's usually several hours of research before one of them. I only did about one today. Did see, Adam Hadwin killed himself early, and I just had some amazing starting golf teams with him as my one afternoon guy, and it was just over half an hour into his round.
It was troubling to make those big numbers. Course played super easy yesterday. It played very hard this morning, and now it's easing up. Friday shows are going to be fun because I'm going to be tilting on the air. We just got on. I needed Burgoon to birdie the last two holes to make the cut. He did. As Chesson Hadley hits it into the native area. And that's going to be something we'll have to monitor. But yeah, the golf, it's interesting. I thought that ownership was going to be tough to predict on the whole. It's the new season. There's new guys. And for the most part, I think we saw that. I was kind of surprised. Just overall, there wasn't glaring, mega chalk because we're all feeling stuff out. Some of the Webbies got up there, Im in particular, who I think we all thought would be popular. Mm-hmm. But did you notice anything from an ownership standpoint that kind of stuck out?
I noticed that none of the rest of them were popular at all, and it was kind of cool. there were a lot of guys that I was really excited about. That I thought were pretty good plays that were kind of projecting at 2, 3, 4%, and some of them were even less than that. So I felt great. That's the thing is yesterday it started off so hot. I had a bunch of really low owned guys that had really good mornings. I was first and second in the 153 max with one guy left to go. It was stupid Hadwin. And I was sitting in first and second in the 153 max as Hadwin was 4 over. And it just, it's just not fun to watch that because, it's it looks really good right now, but this is all over. Hadwin is -3 for the day now, by the way, just birdied again.
Yeah, and he's not even close.
No, he's 4 strokes out.
Yeah, it's the other thing that we'll talk about the Webbies for a little. It was weird. The ones that most of the guys that really made a splash, and it's the first day, they will not hold. I would say almost all of them, but they were not even the next tier. After him, I think there was a couple popular names that people had thrown out. Chase Wright, this guy from
Straka,
nobody was on them, and I think that's just we're gonna have a feeling out. If one of those guys emerges, so be it. I don't think that there's any pedigree to think that they're gonna hit the ground running. It's a long tournament. We'll start to see guys even Phil, not that he's a Webby, but he might as well be at this point. Like, he played out of his mind yesterday. Now he's starting to come back to earth a little. He said that he's not in good form. He's gassed. He's got nothing. Like, if he is up there on Sunday, that would be pretty shocking, honestly.
Yeah, I don't really see that happening. But no, this is, looking at this board now, it's Troy Merritt, Ryan Moore, who I honestly was not particularly interested. Like, I get it a little bit, but he's just been so bad that I really jammed Cantlay, and then I thought Hadwin was like a pretty significantly higher value than anyone else around there. So I got
over on Moore. I liked him. There's a couple of guys, and again, they maybe had a little disappointing season, but I still kind of think long term, a hard reset can help them. Only 2 days, he can get hot. That was weird with him last year. His putting was really bad, and he's notoriously a much better putter. He likes POA. So we'll see. This is going to go low.
Neds. That was where I did that. That was where I sort of lost my Moore exposure, because pretty much Jam Cantlay had a lot of Sneds and a lot of Hadwin.
There you go. And I don't have much of Sneds, which is going to be scary. He played very well yesterday.
He did.
We'll see where the cut, it's looking, I'd say -2 is really slim at this point. It's starting to creep. 3 seems the odds-on favorite. And then if scoring really eases up, who knows where it goes. But I would say -3 is what you want to feel. I'll tell you this, if all my golfers on the cusp right now posted -3, I'd feel pretty good. So we'll see what happens.
Adam Hadwin only needs eagles on every hole that he has left. So actually, no, it's mathematically impossible for him to get to -3. I'm calling it.
That's tough when even in the theory world you can't make it. That's tough.
Yeah, no, it's over. Yeah. Nope. Totally impossible. Remember when we thought Chris Kirk was like the biggest disaster on the board? It got so weird in the afternoon yesterday.
Yeah, and again, it's one day. The putting, Chris Kirk was who I thought he was. He hit his irons well. He was almost dead last in putting. Him and Fred Couples were actually dead last. And it's true. I thought that was my only problem. Now there's a lot of other guys that you're going to have to sweat. And this is a common theme with easier tracks. You post a good score to the visual eye, you're -5, -4. That means if you shoot over par the next day, you have a real chance to get cut in a birdie fest like this. So like someone like Cantlay, he has to still play well today. It's not like he's a shoo-in.
No,
he's on the line. It's a weird concept. But we'll see where it goes. The object in golf, we talk about it all the time, is first step, you got to get 6 of 6. You're not going to be able to do much without that. Yeah.
I do have some outs. I have some ridiculously nice looking teams with a lot to go this afternoon, but it's unfortunately my best teams that avoided all the obvious landmines. I had a lot of Sean Stephanie too, which whatever. I will argue some other time about. I really thought he was a super safe play this week. Did not work out that way. But I have a lot of teams wrapped up in Hillbilly, and he's at -1 now. So I'm going to need him to post a 69 today. And if that happens, life is good.
Yeah. Obviously, Kirk getting through would be nice. Justin Hadley, who I really – so the way my ownership fell, I went aggressively balanced, which, again, I don't pick and choose what I do. It's just what happens. So I have a handful of guys around 55 to 45%. Hadley's one of them. Kirk is one of them. So those two, if both of them don't get through, I'm going to have serious problems. The other two are looking pretty good.
Yeah, I have a fair amount of Hadley. Honestly, my only hope in cash at this point is if he doesn't make it, because he was very popular. So that, I'm kind of indifferent to Hadley at this point, which is good because he's shooting his second shot from the native area as we speak.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware, believe me. It's not thrilling.
And then I have no Kirk, so whatever about him.
There you go. So
had a lot of Vaughn Taylor, who's shot a +2 today. That's not exciting. He was looking very good yesterday.
It's going to be that long season, though. We're not going to overreact to the Safeway Open. Unless I win, then we need to overreact. That's going to set the tone for the entire year.
My plan is to win. Yeah, that's still in the cards. Just gonna get Hillbilly to go out and do his thing. Did you watch some football last night?
I watched some football. I didn't watch the whole game. I played some Showdown. We knew it was going to be, a common build is, you go like double defense, kickers. If you think there's a chance for the low scoring, I threw that strategy out last night, as a lot of people did, because it didn't seem any way that there weren't, weapons utilized, and there were. 38-24, Edelman, Gronk. There's a lot of weapons on that side now. Josh Gordon caught a really nice touchdown. And the Colts are bad. Luck's doing what he can with the weapons. Ebron with a hilarious big game on a Thursday slate. Yeah. Typical. For an exciting game, it wasn't really exciting because it was never in doubt,
Yeah. I talked about this a little the other day, but like the Colts run a very vanilla defensive scheme, which is probably good because they don't have particularly talented personnel. But if you're just running sort of base cover 2 out there against someone like Tom Brady, like he's gonna eventually pick that apart. That'll work against sort of weaker quarterbacks, and it makes sense. It's more of a bend don't break kind of deal. You're dropping a couple safeties. You're making sure you're kind of hoping that the offense screws it up themselves, and that's not something Tom Brady's going to do. So he's going to put up points on something like that.
And I'm with you. Like, you got to know the Colts, they're doing what they can. I actually think even last night, what are you going to do? You
can't do some sort of fancy defense with them because you're going to screw it up. The whole point is they're saying, hey, the other team, why don't you screw it up for us? And there's teams that'll do that.
For sure. That happens. We talk about all the time. Even in DFS, like, step 1, don't beat yourself. Like, give yourself a chance. So we'll see. So yeah, we talked a little last night about the Sunday slate. I haven't dug in too much. We're still waiting. The injuries are going to get more and more clear. And I feel like this week there's a ridiculous amount of guys that are somewhat banged up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of injury news happening. I think, as of right now, TJ Yeldon is your best value on the board. I think that's going to make him particularly popular. But, again, being on the road, there's certainly ways for him to fail. So I don't know that he's going to be a lock. But certainly a lot of injury news still to come. So we shall see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with Mixon, Bernard, Mark Walton situation. It seems like Mixon's back in business.
And Gio, I think, is leaning out, right?
That's what it seems like. And if I'd assume Mixon, gets the full workload, if he does, that could be that could be an interesting one.
He's relatively fully priced, though, is he not?
Well, you can make. For me, I thought that he was. I think Mixon's a really good player, and I think going forward, he's going to be up in the Melvin Gordon territory when all is said and done. So for that, he's still underpriced, but where he was, he didn't get a discount for being hurt, if that's what you're asking.
Right. 6,900. I have him for about 70% of the workload, projecting for 19.8 points right now. At a flex spot, I'd rather pay the extra $600 for James Conner or Juju. But Mixon's compelling, sure.
Yeah, we'll see. The volume, that's going to be the key with him. He's going to need some, and we'll see if he's all right. It's going to be that. Obviously, we talked a little about the Packers last night. Those are tricky spots. This happens all the time where it has a basketball feel. Like when the point guard gets hurt and there's a min price point guard. It's like, well, if he's seeing 30 minutes, you basically have to play him. I feel like that happens sometimes with football when there's massive injuries to one spot. It's like, there's a 3K. I feel like it never works out that way. They get 3 targets and they catch 2 for 40 yards and they get 6, and that doesn't do anything.
No, certainly not at wide receiver. At running back, it's a little bit of a different story. But they've done a pretty good job of pricing the backups so that they're at least like Corey Clement in week 3 was that or 2, whatever that was.
Yeah, week 2.
That was one of those cases where he was 4,300. And I played a ton of him. I thought that he was I thought it was worth it, that 4,300. Mm-hmm. That didn't really work out, but they priced him up enough so that it was still like a question. My point is more like if he was $3,000, you just got to do it. Like what was the Devontae Booker thing a couple of years ago? Remember that week?
It's just becoming, even with running backs, it's always a committee in these situations, 7, 7, 8, and it's just tricky. It's not like it seems in years past. Plus, I know we say it every show now. It used to be, oh, well, if he's 3K and he gets me, 13, that's not really going to work these days. That's too much opportunity cost to sacrifice a spot, even if the multiplier is good for that cheap of a price.
Even the absolute smashes like Gio last week at 6,300, who got like 25 points, like that didn't really get you anywhere in tournaments.
No.
And that was an awesome play.
The pure punt seems to be almost extinct if this is what we're going to see, because you can't take someone at 3-2 and have them get 15.
No, but what ends up happening is you get someone down there, the Calvin Ridleys of the world, who get 3 targets and 48 points. And it's like, all right, great.
That isn't extinct. That's if you can do
that. There, you need to find the guy that makes long touchdowns.
It's true. So we got that. We are going to talk a little college football later in the show, which that'll be fun. I didn't play last week. I should have. Wish I could have. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying not to overreact to the first 4 weeks because you don't want to start changing things up. But it's similar to when you evaluate a play and you say, okay, here's his results. Is this going to last, or is this just a blip on the radar? Some things that we've seen are going to be the norm going forward, and then other things are not. It seems like obviously flat QB pricing seems like it's here to stay, and scores where 200's not what it once was. It seems like that's here to stay.
I think you're probably right. I will say this week, the games themselves, like if Atlanta, but if Atlanta Pittsburgh were to crater this week, I think there's outs for it being a lowers. It's not, there's not as many like, crazy high upside spots, I think, this week as there were the last couple.
We've also seen, chalk has been getting there at, now that's something I don't think that we will see. It seems a little unsustainable. Not everyone, of course, there's been landmines. There's been multiple times now where, and it's not even just punts, it's high-end chalk, and that's even more deadly. Kamara comes to mind, of course. Like, that pump scores really fast.
Yeah. All right, well, then before we get to college football, let's talk about who I think will be the premier high-end chalk this weekend.
Sure.
Best, really nice projection. I think McCaffrey rates out slightly better sort of value from a value standpoint, but a guy who I think will be very, very popular, Todd Gurley, on the road in Seattle, historically a very tough place against half of the defense. Like, they've been awful. Bobby Wagner.
You think Gurley will be popular?
I would imagine so, yeah.
See, it's funny. And maybe this is just me. I still, and I don't disagree with it. I actually agree with everything you just said. There is a part of me that still has the allure of the Seahawks at home specifically. I don't know.
Yeah, I want to believe. I mean, I am with you there in general. Like, on the season was very much like that. I thought that they were going to show up in week 3 when they certainly did. But losing Earl Thomas on top of all the other stuff the defense is really, really short on talent now.
Well, when you break it down, I think there's no debate that would lead you. I'm saying kind of at a first glance, I wonder how many people look. They don't see Kamara. They see Gurley at Seahawks and they think, ooh, tough spot for that price tag. I'm going to go to, Melvin Gordon and those type of guys and pay up for Antonio Brown.
Yeah, that's possible. Honestly, you're probably right, because I think the luxury spends this week are going to be Brown and Julio, because people are going to want to play that game.
That's what I thought, which to me, what you talked about, it's almost like backwards. in the sense that I think Gurley's a really good play. I was hoping that he only comes in maybe in the teens, and you could get someone who maybe on paper looks a little scarier than it actually is. That defense is toast. And he's matchup proof anyway. They get him the ball in space. The guys, the Rams are no joke, as everyone knows.
Right. But at 9,400, like we've talked about this a lot, Kamara's burned us on it, but like at 9,400 in a tournament, unless I guess what you're doing here is you're kind of, because you can't play Gurley and Antonio and Julio. Like I'm assuming that's just absolutely impossible. So you're hoping that the Atlanta-Pittsburgh game does crater, in which case, like, there is an out for it being a lower scoring week. But if Todd Gurley is on your team, you're hoping, like, if you're rostering Todd Gurley in a tournament, you're hoping it's one of those weeks where 180 is the Millie winning score, which happens. Hasn't happened this year.
I mean, he's also competing against those guys. Like, if Todd Gurley, and this is a part of DFS that I don't know if it's explored as much as it should be. If Todd Gurley, say he gets 34, which is very, that's a really nice score. And these are big ifs, if Antonio Brown and Julio both get 40, well, you're in big trouble then. It's all about what you're sacrificing to do what you do.
Yeah.
Both ways. Whether, if they both crater, sometimes, especially on short slates, that's what people don't get, on a 2-game slate. When an expensive guy, even if he gets 2x, the raw points, you need them in a lot of spots. There's just nowhere else to go.
Yeah, you got to spend it. But yeah, on a big slate like this, if Gurley scores 35 and Tony and Julio both score 17, you're in business. Yeah.
And that's building the puzzle. The games don't correlate, but at the same time, you have to know, well, you just said you can't take all three of them. I would say a ridiculous number of rosters, over 50%, are going to have at least one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of your main decisions of the week. And then you got to work around it. That's just one piece of it. But I think every slate, it's been around Kamara and Michael Thomas has been that question first. Like, what are you doing with the Saints? And then you move on. And this week it's, that Falcons-Steelers game. Or do you want to do Gurley and I think be a little against the grain?
Yeah. I mean, I would still – we're talking Todd Gurley. He's not coming in at 12%. You're like hoping for 18. I think that's
I'm hoping for not 40% Kamara style. That's
not happening. Just there's too many other options. People want to play, Melvin Gordon's up there too, and people want to play him. I really want to play Christian McCaffrey. I don't know how much does he get lost in the shuffle a little bit? I don't know. He rates out as the best value of all of those guys just because he's a little bit cheaper, but he's got a similar projection to everyone. That guy's got like insane workload.
I mean, that's the one team that they had a bye, but I've gotten them. I mean, Cam and him have been a staple of my lineups early in the year, and they've been great. I feel like quietly almost. He had the kind of it wasn't an anomaly in the sense that he can't duplicate it, but we had both talked about, and you had mentioned that actually got you onto Tevin Coleman. He had a monster rushing in week 3, which is not what we normally see. He racks up the targets. So I would suspect they go back to him more as an asset in the receiving game, but who knows? The Giants are nothing special. No,
and like the one talented player they have on defense is the run stopper, the snacks guy. So I think it's a bit of a like attacking. You don't really jam it right up the middle against the Giants. They're still pretty good at stopping that. So I think, it leads more to I would be willing to bet that 2 weeks ago was Christian McCaffrey's career high in rushing yards.
Yeah, and it will be. We'll see. That's a guy, I'll be obviously discussing this on Sunday morning too, but Odell, I know they're in a little turmoil. I have to imagine they try even harder to get him the ball this week. He's starting to show some displeasure about the way they're going about this.
Oh, God. That'll be funny.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't, Eli's Eli, but they got to find ways to get him the ball. He's, for everything, you could say what you want about him. He is incredible when they can get him in space.
Yeah. Hadley, honestly, a pretty nice save on that par 5.
Yeah, he hit it the road less traveled. off the screen, and then
When
we'll see.
shot 2 is 120 yards to unknown, 205 yards to the hole, you're pretty happy to walk out of that with a par.
Oh, I was quite thrilled. Hopefully, he can find find a way in, and we'll have a good golf sweat to get this year start off right. I don't want to bounce around too much, but we did have a little industry news in the basketball world.
Yeah.
FanDuel is not going. I thought it was going to be late swap. I was nervous. They are actually doing kind of what Fantasy Draft does, where it's an extra spot and they drop the lowest score. So that should prevent some late scratches. But you're going to have to, even without that, you're going to have to plan your strategy around what you do with that spot each and every night.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. I always liked playing on I've enjoyed playing on Fantasy Draft. I wish they had gotten a little more traction because the problem is it's a cool site, it's a good format. They just didn't have enough people playing on there to really have contests that get people pumped. That's a bit of a negative feedback loop at that point, because like if you don't have the contest, then the people won't play, and then if the people don't play, you don't have the contest. So
the only way to do it is to have a ton of runway and offer crazy overlay for a long time.
Which is what DraftKings is probably still not making money, but
so that is cool. I think obviously we got a team of experts. We got Fast Eddie and the boys and everyone, your projections. My first thought was that you're going to be primarily punting in that spot all the time, not planning for anything. Of course, you can tailor it to maybe a guy who sees the court just as a backup plan, but for the most part, it's about still making a lineup of 8 guys.
Yeah. I think that's probably true. It's just how often are you like the one play that screwed you from smashing on an NBA slate? I feel like that happens a lot. So like leaving yourself an out is probably a pretty good idea. Like, yeah, I agree. You go dumpster diving, you want a min price guy, but I don't think you want one I don't think you just give up the spot, because it's really hard to hit all 8,
Yeah, if you try to build like balanced, I feel like you would end up cannibalizing it's no good to have the highest person who's dropped. Like, how is that going to help you?
No, I'm not saying you go balanced, but I'm saying you leave yourself a punt with some upside. Like,
I bet we do see a lot of people who just say, oh, I'm going to just pick an extra guy as if I'm making a 9-man team. And I don't think that's the way to go at all.
No, I agree with that.
We'll see.
I mean, it's also going to turn it into, what's happened to it's funny that you are into it, because it's going to turn into what's happened to this NFL season, where every night in NBA becomes a birdie fest. Like, there's going to be some massive scores with everyone getting an extra out.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about that, but you know what? If it was late swap, I'm not sure how much NBA I would even be playing, because I've talked about how with late swap, it's not going to work for me much. I'll play slates where I can be there, but on the whole, not optimal.
No, it's brutal, man. Like, we spend so much time dealing with this stuff as it is. And like, listen, I don't mean to complain. Like, I have a great job. Like, I get to talk about sports and research sports and, gamble against other people on sports for a living. Like, that, I love to do that. Like, I'm happy that I get to, I get to hang out at home, wear what I want for the most part. But it's a lot of work. And like, I think it's more work than sometimes than people imagine. And I don't want to add 3 hours to every day. I don't.
It's not even just that. And it's funny, I saw, and I forget, one of our subs this morning was talking about, I think they're saying it tongue in cheek. I wish there was an article for like how to deal with multiple sports at once. And you know what? It's actually a serious topic, because, and everyone different. If you're playing for entertainment, you want to play, but diving into all these different sports, you got to make sure you know what you're doing, or you're just going to be screwed across the board. Like, adding another sport, it's tough, especially if you're just firing, because there are people who aren't just firing, and you just want to make sure you're committed to what you're doing. especially if you're doing this somewhat seriously to try to make some money. Like playing, it's fun to play preseason. It's fun to play the playoffs and MLB and golf and NFL and college football and EPL all at the same time and MMA. But it can be really tough. And if you really step back and look, ask yourself, like, am I putting in the work or am I just looking for the next slate? And if the answer is you're just looking for the next slate, make sure you're doing this just to have some fun and get some gamble, because if not, you're really massively minus EV.
Oh yeah. I mean, when we first came over to Osmo, when we first, the sort of merger happened, we had, talked about how we were going to do this show. And like, I think after we'd already agreed, whatever, like the college football thing happened like 5 days before we were supposed to start this show.
Yep.
And you were like, okay, this is great. I love college football. I'm really into it. This is a sport I know anyway because I actually gamble on it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. That sounds great. I'll just pick up some college football knowledge along, like I'm going to dive into this. And it's like, I mean, it was a weekend where I'm just like, you know what? It's just not going to happen. Like, I don't have time. I spend 50 plus hours a week researching golf, basketball, and football. Like, I mean, I can't adding another sport to that, and I know, and baseball too, I don't follow baseball closely, but I know it pretty well and very deep into the numbers. I don't think you have to know baseball as well to play it DFS wise, but I don't know. It just, I realized it wasn't going to happen for me with college football.
It's true. I wanted to pick up NHL, and you want to make sure if you're doing it, just try to balance it. And too many sports at once is a really fast way. It doesn't feel as bad as you lose faster, but you don't notice it. I know with me, like even this week, I was like, oh yeah, it's because I play golf, college football, NFL. I did a couple showdowns. Like that will be, and there's so many slates now. You want to be cognizant, and we're going to be doing, starting going forward, we're gonna start being more interactive. We're gonna be sharing our screen. That's kind of some of the stuff we're gonna go over, just the different slates, different options within a day, because most likely, you probably shouldn't be playing them all unless you really have a streamlined process.
Yeah, it's brutal. And also, I mean, that's worth mentioning too. The way like you and I do research is pretty different, and college football is way more your style than mine.
Definitely.
Because that's a like hanging out on Twitter and reading articles kind of thing. And that's not really what it's college football is not something you can load a bunch of data into a spreadsheet and try to solve the puzzle that way. It's something that you have to and that's just the difference in how you and I do things. I like to have a pile of numbers and try to sift through them and put the pieces together that way, versus you like to deep dive on reading about stuff and finding different info and different reportings in the dark corners of the internet.
Make your birdie putts, guy. It's
true. Missed that 9-footer.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of college football, we do have a little slate tomorrow.
Yep.
It's an interesting one. It's, we're getting to, obviously conference play is here. Makes it tougher. Games are less lopsided, less low scoring. It's better for, I think, DFS as a whole in terms of you don't see as many, how long is this guy going to play? But the matchups, the totals drop, and it's tricky. There's some real defenses on the slate almost across the entire one. I didn't see many games where it was just like, wow, this is the West Virginia, Texas Techs of the world.
Yeah, there's no Hawaii Army game this week,
Those are long gone.
That's the best game
we
of the
got
year.
Good teams on the slate. This is one of I think the best. Pretty much every heavy hitter from Bama to Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, all in action. But
you're disrespecting Georgia. See, I know some stuff about college football.
I am. I think everyone's disrespecting.
Oh, really? Georgia. I thought they were aren't they the 4th or 5th best team or something like that?
They are. They're not on the slate though, for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, I know. That's what I'm saying. You said every heavy hitter, and I said Georgia's not on the slate. See,
it's true. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Georgia, it's basically going to come down they're going to have to go through Alabama at the end if everything holds serve. They will play in the SEC championship. So the question will be, will a one-loss Georgia possibly get in over a team that maybe skirts through unscathed? Time will tell. I don't know.
What's the cut?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we got.
Yeah, a couple of games. I don't know. Like honestly, this doesn't stand out as much, but that might be good. There's going to be some uglier games. The obvious one was Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's so Red River rivalry at the Cotton Bowl, play every year, huge deal, neutral field game. Texas, I mean, they started off the year embarrassingly bad. They lost to Maryland, who's garbage.
Gig 'em. They didn't gig them.
Right? They didn't gig them. Now they've rallied. BTCU grinded it out last week. They'll be ready to play. Oklahoma's still a mystery. I mean, the offense is electric. Kyler Murray, pretty much going forward, if you can get to him, you should get to him. He's going to be super, super popular. Don't think there's any doubt about it. But him and I know you're not a super college football guy, but a guy that's definitely grown on you early, say it every week, Hollywood Brown, who is always like 7'5", and more often than not, he 5Xs that because he's Murray's favorite target. He's absolutely electric, super fast. So right there, that's a pairing that I wouldn't fault anyone for just starting there.
Nope, I jammed both of them, and now I'm stuck with 5,300 left per player. What do we do?
That's going to be the tricky part. So we've got not a ton of value. Once again, you can look. There's a quarterback though, and it's going to be some risk tolerance. Indiana, Peyton Ramsey, they haven't been challenged. They're going to get their doors blown off. They go to Ohio State, so they're going to be behind. Ohio State, as good as they are, it's not like they're shutting teams out. He's, for a quarterback, super cheap, sub 5K. You could look there. They're coming off an emotional game. They were at, in Happy Valley last week against Penn State. Maybe they sleepwalk a little. Maybe it's 58-24, and you say, you know what, he can get me there. So if you're looking to do two quarterbacks with Murray, that's probably going to be a guy that, we'll have to read up, make sure everything's good. Seems fine to me. Then these other games, I mean, Alabama, I say the same thing every week. They're going to rack up the points, but they score 50 in the first half, and then the game ends 57-10. They take their foot off the gas. They have too many guys to accurately project. Did anything else in terms of games stand out to you?
Oh, no, not particularly. I mean, there's some lower total games that you could try to go at. The Oklahoma State game, 55 total, 10-point spread. You could potentially go after some people there. If you're going after Indiana, if you want the Ramsey guy, is there anyone you would play with him? I mean, the wide receivers are all super cheap for them too.
Yeah, so there's a guy,
Westbrook.
Yeah, I mean him and this other dude who's hurt, and then he came back. He had a huge, some garbage teams. They haven't played a great schedule, but WAP filler. You see the explosion. I could see those guys being punts. Even Hale, it's kind of a roulette. These guys are you're probably hoping if the guy can connect. He does rush a little. He's got some serious attempts. He doesn't rack up the yards, but maybe he's a threat. I haven't watched Indiana, but
it's more play. Maybe do some MME, play one of them in each, but don't try to stack them all together.
No, I wouldn't do that. I just don't think that they can score enough to really keep it. I'll tell you this: if I stacked them up, I would run it back with, instead of Kyler Murray, I would use Haskins, the Ohio State quarterback, and maybe try to do there. But they're another one. They've got legitimately 5-6 receivers that are all viable guys. It's very difficult to pick that production.
Yep, that makes sense. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the Big 12 games, you alluded to them a little. It's still probably your best bet. West Virginia is going to blow the doors off Kansas, but game should be moving. Other than that, though, Oklahoma State, Iowa State's not bad. Clemson, Wake Forest will be a popular one. We'll have to see. Trevor Lawrence, he got hurt last week. Looks like he's good to go. I don't know, though. I'm still a little skeptical. I saw a lot of people were on him last week. I think for me, it's still a stay away. He's a very good, this is super early out. He's the kind of guy everyone's saying he's going to be the number one pick in a couple years. But he's not a great so far. I mean, they haven't taken the wheels off. He's not racking up monster numbers. He's just effective. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if it translates once again to them leaning on the ground, Etienne, and then Justice Hill, who's the other expensive running back for Oklahoma State. Those guys are great if you can fit them in. Wouldn't really go to the Wake run. I talk about when we do discuss Clemson, their defensive line is the best unit, I think, of any unit in the country. It's legitimately like an NFL caliber line.
Yeah. Do you like Dobbins at all? If you're playing, like to pair with Ramsey and one of the cheap wide receivers, and kind of hope that OSU just kind of grounds them to death, and then there's Indiana's throwing to get back into it.
He's all right. The tricky part is they have a guy, Mike Weber, he's not a back, he's a also very effective runner, and he gets touches in real games. He gets certainly work when it gets out of hand, and I just worry a little about Dobbins. If it's a higher scoring slate, I expect him to be effective, find the end zone. Don't think he has 35, 40 point upside though. He just, unless he, of course you can break a long run, but with Mike Weber being the other guy, it's kind of a 1-2 combo.
Okay. Do you like Weber?
Not really. It's one of those situations they don't do enough, and they're both priced slightly.
Weber's 5,900. That's not cheap enough.
It's exactly. It's like nothing. There's situations. The Patriots running back sometimes where it's like, I'll just take a super running back for 10-2. Like I get White and Michelle. Mm-hmm. This is that would be great if they were both $1,000 cheaper. Weber at 5,900, you still don't know what he really sees. So it's kind of tricky. I would rather go to Kennedy McCoy on West Virginia, who's not the first. They like to throw the ball, of course, but he's still effective on the ground. It's tricky. There's not a lot down there. Obviously, Arkansas is just someone I'm omitting from the slate. They have Alabama. And maybe, he's not cheap, but he's not super expensive. If David Montgomery's good to go, and I expect he will be, he's, Iowa State's main go-to guy. Oklahoma State should win that game, but it's not going to be because they clamp down defensively. So if you want a mid-range running back, he's a guy that I certainly think could be looked at.
Yeah. Puka Williams has put up points even when they've been getting smoked. So guy, they're supposed to get smoked again this week, but it seems like he could still get it done.
He's the only. Kansas football is horrendous. They're not as bad as Rutgers football these days, but they are still awful. He seems to be a guy who I knew nothing about, and is a true. He's doing it in the passing game. He does it in the running game. He's their only form of offense. The price is creeping up. A couple weeks ago, he was like mid fives and like 80% owned. 7K is pretty juicy, but absolutely in play, especially if you go Will Grier and pair him up with, Stills or Jennings. You could do that and run it back with him.
Okay.
It's the same story as NFL. It's a different, but you're going to do different pieces if you load up on these inferior teams because you think they hang around and maybe put up some points. I would look to those heavy quarterbacks, whether it's Grier with some of the Kansas guys, Haskins with maybe some of the Indiana guys, or, if you go Kyler Murray, you could look to Texas. And I expect that to be somewhat popular, but there is enough of them that, ownership, Kyler Murray will be probably the most popular, but the other guys will garner some looks for sure that will spread it around.
Yep.
But
Oh, Hadley saved himself.
he what?
I mean, his second shot was not good, and he hit it from the rough to 13 feet. So he's going to par it at least. So if it's at 2, he'll be fine. He's got 13 feet to get himself in for sure.
Got it. Oh God, I really hope he makes that.
He probably won't.
Yeah, probably not. And then he probably will miss on the number, and I will probably have a lot of 5 or 6. It's but yeah, I mean,
Adam Hadwin did not get to -3.
Your prediction held.
Yeah, making sharp calls on this show here. That's what we do.
God, I'm just looking over, the Big Ten games. I'll touch upon them real quick. You got Maryland and Michigan and Northwestern and Michigan State, which, yeesh.
I didn't even know Michigan State played football.
They were like a very dark horse to make the playoff, and they got knocked off by Arizona State early in the year, Herm Edwards and the boys, the Sun Devils. But Michigan is right. They had an ugly start. They are really rounding into form. I think, you had asked about Dobbins. Kerryon Higdon at the same price for me is definitely ahead of him. They like to run the ball. They do run the ball. He's effective. Maryland is not a great team. You hope they can hang around long enough. You don't want him to just get a handful of carries, but he's definitely a guy pretty safe, I think, for a floor in terms of a upper echelon running back.
Okay.
It's just tough. I mean, I think it's a pretty, you never know. On the whole, though, looks like a lower scoring slate. There's just not the 80-point total games on this one.
Okay, well, in that case, if you're looking at one of those slates where it's not just going to be people going nuts, then you can kind of get out of there with that's when the Danny Amendolas of the world become a little more viable. And I think we're going to need some value here. Are there any guys at, $4 or $5 that you are comfortable thinking this guy can probably get me, I don't know, on a shitty college football slate, you still probably need 15, right? Like you're going to have to go a little while. But anybody you like for, 12, 15 points to grind out at a cheaper salary, because we probably need that.
Well, I had mentioned McCoy on West Virginia as a guy. It's tough. I mean, if you think that Trevor Lawrence is a little more effective, they had to roll with a third stringer. This guy Justin Ross, who he's been banking on long touchdowns. He's an explosive player, and there's a lot of mouths to feed in front of him. But again, you're talking flyers. He's not an Amendola type, but he is one of the few down there that, he has an out at least. It's tricky. I mean, I'm going to try my best not to dip too low, in the sense of getting down there in the low 4s, even high 3s. I don't see much down there. It's tricky. Landon Wolf is a guy who, this is sort of game log watching. I didn't even know who he was. He had done absolutely nothing against Kansas, explodes on the scene. Now, Jalen McCleskey transferred. You talked about Stoner did not play last week.
Yeah, that sucked.
If both of them are out again, maybe a guy like that sees another monster workload.
That's Wolf.
Yeah, Landon Wolf. And, this is a guy I had very little knowledge of. He was not involved. That's not a bad range, though. Tamorian Terry is down there for Florida State. And that's a guy, they've been really bad this year, but rivalry game against Miami, he's involved in the offense. It's not that it's not high octane. It's just bad. I don't know why they are so bad. Like even Cam Akers is just ineffective. Patrick not getting enough workload. So there's going to be mix and matches. What I really plan to do is build what we talked about, a couple correlated stacks, and then just see where I'm at, in terms of salary, and let that dictate, and then just try to go best available.
Yep.
I'm not going to reach for punts because I don't think there's enough of them, as my golf goes probably up in flames. Why can't you just make that putt? That's so deflating.
Hadley? I mean, it was 13 feet. That's like you've got a 25-30% chance for that.
Yeah, but he lost he shot even today, and he lost 4 strokes putting.
Yeah. Sean Stephanie lost that many strokes putting yesterday. It's not good.
No, it's not.
At least Wes Bryan and Ollie are the last two. Like, both of those guys lost to Mark Mulder. Well, maybe not yet. Mulder still has a chance to get there with them. He's still got a few holes left. Ollie and Wes Bryan are worse than a pitcher.
Ugh, it's so frustrating. But we shall see. That's really all I got, though, on the college football circuit, to be honest. We'll see. Be cognizant. Use Twitter. Use injury reports. Google. Absolutely. I know it's not fun. Or don't do it and then just roll the dice. There's always that out. You don't have to.
Yeah. You don't. Yeah. That's not sharp. That's why I don't really play much college football. Last week, I often build a lineup just for the hell of it while we're playing the show, just to have some gamble. Didn't really check with it again last week, and I built one while you were kind of giving your plays. Everyone went nuts. It was like a really sick lineup, but it had stupid Dylan Stoner in it who didn't end up playing. I didn't bother to check, and I bubbled everything. Because it was a nasty lineup. Other than that, if I got 25 points from him, I would have been up top in some tournaments, but was not.
That's no fun.
Nope.
No fun. But yeah, I mean, that's what you got to do, and we'll see where it goes. It's just like the NFL. Each slate is ever evolving, whether it's a tricky one, a grinded out kind of one, or soft. This seems like pretty tight pricing. College football is always a little tighter than the NFL these days.
Wow.
But you're just marveling
at the golf? Yeah, just looking at golf. it's chaos out there. Hope that some people get some things happening. I mean, I'm going to have some 6-6s, but not as many as I would like to. You know what I mean? It's looking a little chaotic, and when the field is looking at let me actually check over at cutsweats.com. If you don't know, that's a cool site there, and you can check how many people have what percent. Oh no, 6-6s rising up. This is going to be a bad week.
On that note, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with golf. Don't get your hopes up. We'll talk about some weekend golf in the Slack. So if you're a member, stop on by. We will be in there tilting it, as always.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, nice talking to you, buddy.
Yeah. Have a good weekend. Good luck this week. You catch me Sunday morning if you're, for some reason, want to hear me talk about NFL more. Me and Laffy will be there then.
Yeah, we did our Three Fellows Talking Football last night. That's still available. That's that show is not as specific. I mean, it's specific, but it's not like play by play. It's more about taking the pulse of the NFL that week and kind of seeing what's going on overall. So it's still, even though we didn't have there aren't as many definitive statements, it's like an interesting sort of strategy of what's going to happen in the upcoming NFL week. So still worth checking out. That's over on our awesemo.com YouTube channel, as well as some other places on the internet. And you should watch it. Consider doing that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Check Ben on Sunday. We'll be around in Slack. Josh, we always appreciate you. Hope things are going well in your life. And we'll talk to you all on Monday.